Okay. All right. I'm back. Um, yeah, my internet just won't handle 1080p, so we're gonna run 720p with downscaling. Hopefully, somebody will pop in the chat and let me know if the mic sounds okay. This is my new desktop, so trying to get all of the audio settings set up and that kind of stuff is always a pain when you get a new system. So just let me know if something sounds weird or if you don't have a if you don't hear a mic. Looks like we should be getting everything through. If okay, I'll put a chat to have everyone let me know if the mic is working. And yeah, we'll just get going here. But so welcome to the stream for tonight. The biggest thing today is Blender 4.0 came out today, I believe early in the morning. And I want to just make sure that there are no major rendering speed updates. And I think I've already found one that is definitely not negligible. But we're going to put these cards here to the test. So we're going to test the RTX 4090, the AMD 7800 XT. Okay. Um, Sorry about that. I just rebooted the stream. Let me know if that's better. My internet connection is apparently terrible right now. Really not sure. I'm really not sure why it is being such a pain tonight. Let me go over back to Blender here real quick. It worked. Okay. All right. I know sometimes when I stream too, if I get bad bitrate, it'll kind of like lock up the OBS Studio itself, and it won't let it reconnect. And now it looks like my bitrate is fine, and I should have everything going. So, really sorry about that. I haven't had too many issues streaming lately. I just wasn't sure if it was my end or the new PC or what. All right, let's keep going. So Happy Max, to answer your question, if you couldn't hear me, the 4070 is a very good card. It's comparable to a 3090 and a 3080 Ti speed-wise. You can see those results right here in the Lone Monk scene. Another heavy one is the Barbershop. So it's kind of the same thing. It's right in the same speed range on ray tracing. Do you think the 4070 will drop for Black Friday? Yes, I do think it will. Probably especially because NVIDIA is there's leaks saying that NVIDIA will probably launch like a 4070 Super or a 70 Ti Super. And if they do that, maybe even not for Black Friday, but sometime soon, the 4070 should probably get cheaper, we hope. And, you know, like a 4070 is already a great card, so something with a few hundred more cores and a higher clock speed in a 4070 Super would be a great card as well. Real-time ray tracing. So when you say that, what exactly do you mean? Because like if you're talking about gaming performance or like Blender viewport performance, those ray tracing numbers are going to be pretty similar to what you see in Blender rendering results. So Um, you know, the 3090 has a lot more CUDA cores than the 4070, but at least in rendering and ray tracing, the RT cores on the 4000 series cards are so much better that they compete with much more expensive launch cards from the previous generations. So I would say if you want real time anything, really anything involving ray tracing, a 4070 is a good option versus the high end 30 series cards. Blender Cycles viewport. Yeah, um, viewport rendering is going to be a very similar speed up to these results on here. I haven't measured like EV rendering quite as much. So if you're talking about EV, that's going to be closer to like the CUDA core speed than the RT speed, if you will. But even then, the 4070 will keep up with the 3080 Ti and 3090. It might be slightly behind, but not by much, if any. So the 4070 is the one I would recommend from the 4000 series, unless you can afford the 4090. So I would get one of those two if I had to pick. I would definitely not get a 4060 Ti. I have one. I tested it. It's a very minor discount versus the 4070, but it's significantly slower. These two yellow results here actually show that. So if you're looking at 40 series cards, I would say the 4070 is a standout on really good for speed and price. But what CPU do you recommend, and what are you using for the 4070? Um, the machine I have the 4070 in currently is actually an old Dell T3600 workstation. So it's running a fairly old Intel Xeon processor with 8 cores. NVIDIA's GPUs are not as sensitive to having newer machines as some of the other brands, especially Intel, because Intel has to have the resizable bar setting turned on. Otherwise, you'll have problems. You'll lose a lot of speed. AMD is a little bit in between the two, but so currently I'm running the 4070 in an older Dell. These test results were on a X470 motherboard with a 5800X CPU. So I think you could get away with having an older CPU, but you know there's other reasons to decide which CPU you want, if that makes sense. So I would say at very least have 6 good newer cores. So like a 5600X would be a great CPU for an intro to Blender, because that's also a very good value for gaming and other workloads. But you know, if you want something higher end, there's really good prices out there for 12 core 5900X processors, stuff like that. But as far as getting like all the speed out of the 4070, you could have a pretty slow CPU and you won't have any problems. So like currently the machine I'm running has the 4090, and I just upgraded this one to the 7950X, and the render time is marginal different. Happy Mac says i5 13500 is what I'm thinking. Yeah, if you want to go that route, I think that'd be a fantastic processor. At very least, it's not going to bottleneck the modern GPUs at all. So as long as your motherboard that you pick has at least 8 lanes at Gen 3 speed, which I think they all will for that processor. But anything over 8 lanes of Gen 3 speed is not going to bottleneck almost all GPUs. But you probably have a 4.0 by 16 on that CPU. So, but yeah, I think i5 13500 is a great CPU for 3D work, and they just have a lot more cores than an i5 used to, so that's also nice. It's one of those nice to haves. But yeah, you can't go wrong with that. I'm gonna run this Scanlands real quick while we're talking. But yeah, no, I'm glad I got the stream going. I had some bitrate problems. I had some audio problems. I'm really sorry for that, everyone. Um, New PC and my internet is always unpredictable, so got a lot of factors, but we're kind of rolling again. Happy Max. I love the questions. I love helping people out while we're doing these live streams. That's what they're for. Um, but yeah, so let's record this result. So this is the last test for the 4090. This ran at 24.2 seconds on the Scanlan scene. So let's go look at how that compares. And I always say them and then I forget them. 24.2. 24.2. And again, what we're finding so far is that Blender 4, it's possible that my system has something else going on that makes this difference, but Blender 4 is actually 4 seconds slower on the 4090 currently. And that could just be, let's see if there's no new NVIDIA driver yet, but a brand new driver will probably come out for Blender 4 here soon. And I'll have to retest these on NVIDIA because you never know, that might just kind of speed this up again. But it looks like the initial results here on all of these tests, except for the classroom, which we kind of threw out anyway. That one was close, but Barbershop was 4.6 seconds slower on the 4090 in Blender 4 versus 3.6. Lone Monk was 7 seconds slower on Blender 4. And Scanlan's was 4.2 seconds slower on Blender 4. How powerful of a CPU cooler do you need? What I would do is I would take the TDP of your processor and compare it to the specs of the cooler you want. But if you're asking about the i5 13500, you're probably good with a really good quality air cooler. Should be fine. I'm not sure what the TDP is though. I would use air coolers for probably up to 120 watt TDP CPUs. If you start to get into higher than that, maybe start to look into dual fan radiators. I prefer radiators with in my case, I have a 360 millimeter all-in-one Corsair cooler, but I also have a 230 watt TDP CPU. And even with this big radiator, this thing runs, it like idles at 51 Celsius. All right. Okay. Again, sorry. I refreshed the stream one more time. Hopefully doing that will fix the connection issue. Let me pull up Speedify real quick. I should be getting enough to keep a stable stream, so I'm not sure what's going on. I'll keep going here for a minute. Okay, let me know if you can hear me. I switched off of AV1 encoding and moved back to H.264. That will probably help a little. I think AV1 is apparently less stable for some reason, because now it looks like it's doing a little bit better. So let me know. Man, I'm really sorry, guys. I don't normally have this many problems. I don't know. Okay. Okay. All right. Should be back online. This is awful internet, you guys. I'm really sorry. I know I keep saying that. Yeah, hey, you're welcome. Sorry the stream is cutting out so many times tonight. Really don't know what's going on. Both of my internet connections just died at the same time and rebooted, so maybe something got figured out. Could be internet drivers on this new computer. I don't know. But thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Good luck with the PC upgrade. Let me know how it goes. I'm always excited to hear how people's machines are going. So that's all cool to me. But thanks for being here. Really, really appreciate you. But all right. Hopefully I haven't scared everyone off. I'm gonna put one more chat in. Sorry about the internet tonight. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to the tests for the 7800 XT. I'm really excited to see if HIPRT has changed at all. I know that Blender 4.1 is supposed to actually have more updates for it, and Blender 4.0 may or may not have them yet. So let me go ahead and get that stuff going. So I'm going to not save my splash screen there. All right. Now, render. Let's remote into these and we'll just see what we've got going. So render 11 has one of these GPUs, and I believe render 11 has the 7800 XT. One last thing, all-in-one or air cooler. With a 65 watt TDP, you'll be just fine with a decent quality air cooler. So if you want to save some money, go get a Hyper 212, I think is what they're called. I have a few of those. They do a lot more than they're even supposed to. So I think you'd be well off with one of those. If you really want an all-in-one cooler, you probably only need a single radiator. So you just need a 120, I bet. And that thing should be pretty quiet and cold. So really either way, but you may as well save the money and get the air cooler, to be completely honest. So I'm going to pull up the task manager here to show you this machine. So this one has the 7800 XT. This is a 5800X processor, and I have 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM at 3600. Yep, bye, thank you. Thanks for coming in. All right, and then here's our GPU, is the 7800 XT. So I'm going to go ahead and start these tests up. So let's load Blender 4. So HIPRT has got a couple upgrades over the last few months. I don't think this has the full implementation yet. So let's go to our edit preferences. We have HIP selected, just the GPU, and I have HIPRT checked on. Now note here, it says experimental still. When this is fully implemented, it should run a lot faster, for one, and for two, it should, this experimental tag should come off of here. So I don't think Blender 4 has the full implementation, but we may get a significant speed boost from that when it comes out. So that's another one I'll be watching. I'll try to update everybody on when it does come out, because that could be a really big game changer for AMD GPUs. But let's get into these things. So this is the classroom scene running on the 7800 XT. Again, this is a very light scene relatively, so it's verging on being not useful anymore, but it does take a little bit, so it's still a result we can compare. But we're going to round this up to 30 seconds. It's just under 30 seconds. So we're in the classroom results here. We'll call this 30 even. Okay, so let's compare this one And I'll go find my best result for the 7800 XT, which is here. It looks like it's actually 2 seconds slower in Blender 4. Okay? So this is the pattern I saw with NVIDIA too, with my 4090. Just a little bit slower in Blender 4. Now, I'm not surprised because new drivers probably aren't out for Blender yet. Most of these chip makers will actually add in extra driver updates for Blender specifically. So just to check our loading time, I'm going to run this one more time to make sure we didn't have to compile shaders. And we'll see if that gets us back down to that 28-second number that I was able to get before. So the big thing here that is different than in the past, all three of these GPUs are running at a full Gen 3 or Gen 4 or higher 16-lane slot. I don't have any multi-GPUs set up right now, so everything gets a full 16 lanes. So there shouldn't be any questions about bottlenecking on that end. And this one ran again in, so this is 28.75 seconds. So I think we're down into the reasonable error range. So 28.75 in Blender 4 versus, where was that here? 28 in Blender 3.6. So let's just type that in here. So that's basically within a second of each other. That's basically just margin of error. So let's go ahead and we'll call that one the same. So it looks like in Classroom there was no speed up. Now let's go run Barbershop on the AMD. Some of these heavier scenes, I'm more curious to see how they do. But realistically, they're probably similar results as everything else we've seen so far. So on one hand, it's disappointing if they're not very different, because we want to see those free speed boosts that come with software updates. But it's also okay if stuff didn't get slower. So if they added some extra stuff, I know they changed how the shaders work and stuff like that. Just the normal principled shader is set up different now. So stuff like that, always has the risk of slowing things down and not making them better. But it looks like we are getting the same results as we had in Blender 3.6. So here's the preferences again. We're in the barbershop scene. 7800 XT with the HIP RT enabled. So let's go ahead and render this one now. Oh, man. That is getting old, you guys. Looks like I had another internet cut out. I think I'm back on now. So sorry for that, you guys. I'm so sorry. I don't want to have to do that to you. But I think Blender 4.1 and 4.2 are probably going to have the render speed boost that we're hoping to see. I don't think they're reflected in Blender 4 yet. So my stream cut out there for a second, but we're waiting for the class or the barbershop scene here to finish rendering. And I was just saying I don't think Blender 4 has any new rendering updates at this point. I'll still run all these scenes just to see. I think Intel has quite a bit newer drivers now, so that will be probably the most likely to have a speed boost just from Intel's side. But so far, NVIDIA and AMD have been the same result as previous tests, or slightly slower than previous tests. So this one's almost done. This was 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So 122. So let's type that in. 122. And it looks like that is about 4.5 seconds slower than my previous result. So just like the 4090, we're comparing this one, which is the new result, to this one right here, which is the old result. So it looks like Blender 4 actually runs slightly slower, and that could be all kinds of there could be all kinds of causes for that, including the shaders in these old test scenes don't make sense to the new Blender as much, so there's some inefficiency there. I don't know exactly why it's happening, but that seems to be the pattern. So they're either a tie or they're slightly slower now. Let's try Lone Monk. This is the biggest, heaviest one in the batch here. We're on HIPRT. I'm going to go ahead and start rendering. And it looks like we didn't have to set up anything, so this one's going to just start rendering nicely right away. And this one will take a little bit of time. So I'm actually going to minimize this remote desk, and we're going to open one with the Intel GPU PC. So this one is, it says here I'm connecting to Werewolf. That is my old desktop. It is now in the back room as a rendering / benchmarking PC, which is exciting because this is a very, very good motherboard and very fast RAM. So it's nice to have really good machines to test GPUs on because you know you're not bottlenecking them. All right, so that should be loading. So the Arc GPU will be ready to go for us while we wait for the 7800 XT to finish rendering the Lone Monk scene. All right. Also, exciting news this week. Late last night, I was actually accepted into the YouTube Partner Program. So I don't have any ads yet, but all the other fun stuff, the super chats and stickers and things I don't understand how to use, are all enabled now. And it's just really exciting to me because it's been a year and 10 months since I started doing this, and I'm kind of finally getting to that point of real validation from YouTube's end. So I don't know if you guys knew that or not, or if you're, if you follow my channel or not. But that's the big exciting news this week. So thanks for being here and supporting me. It means a lot. It's a really, really weird game to start a channel, and it's really hard. It takes a lot of work. So I appreciate you being here and checking it out. And on the flip side, I hope this information is useful to you guys, so you can make better decisions buying stuff, and eventually, hopefully, enjoy some of my own animations that I share with you guys. But thanks for being here, and sorry about all the internet problems. But we'll get some good data. Regardless, we'll push through it. We'll figure it out. Looks like we're just about done here. So one thing I noticed is some of the loading at the beginning of the rendering process, it actually seems to be faster to me. And then the rendering itself is just slightly slower total. So I'll be curious to read in the next releases if they've changed anything that will fix that. All right, now this one is almost done. Just a few samples. 3 minutes and 24 seconds. So let's go to the Lone Monk tab. 3 times 60 plus 24. So 204 seconds is what the Lone Monk took versus a previous result of... All right, okay. Now here we actually have the flip result. So let's look into that. So this was the old result on Blender 3.6 at 215.5 seconds, and now we're at 204. So in the Lone Monk scene, it actually looks like we got a little bit of a speed boost. So that's kind of going against what we thought we had going before. So that's kind of good news. Let's run the last scene here. Now, within, within 10 seconds on a 2-minute scene is probably error, but I'm glad we're not just seeing that it's slower across the board, because realistically, changing machines and doing some other things like that may be the difference and not the actual rendering API. But let's render the Scanlan scene here and finish out our tests on the 7800. Dami is in the chat. Hello. Hello. I don't know if you've been watching or not. I've had horrible internet connection tonight, so I've been restarting the stream over and over. So just a fair warning, that may or may not happen going forward, but it looks like it's a lot more stable now, so hopefully we're good. But we're running the last test on the 7800 XT. So far, results are mixed. Blender 4 seems to be just about as fast in cycles rendering as 3.6 was. So I would say at this point, they're probably about the same software-wise. Got into a meeting. Hey, no problem. I appreciate you trying to watch while I'm while you're at work. Yeah, I know scheduling and everybody's in different places in the world and stuff. It's always tough. So, and oh, Edgar the Face popped in. Hey, glad to have you here, man. Edgar the Face has talked to me a lot on YouTube. We're actually working on setting up a Google form that people can submit their own test results on. So it's just kind of a nice fillable form, and it'll send us the data, and then we can approve your data and add it to our master list of results. So thank you to Edgar the Face for working with me on that. That's been a really cool idea to start going on. But yeah, Dami, to answer your question, how's it looking so far? Let's record this one, and then we'll kind of summarize what I found on the 4090 and now on the 7800 XT. So this is 1 minute and 45 seconds. We'll round it up just a little. And this is Scanlan's. So 145 is 105 seconds. So let's highlight that one, and let's go find our other 7800 result. So that one was 2 seconds slower. It looks like I had listed in here that this was on HIP before, but I don't think so. I know Scanlan's I had problems running that on worse computers with the 7800 XT before, so I think having a better computer, this should probably say RT, if I had to guess. There are no instances on ray tracing enabled GPUs where the older APIs are faster. I can say that for sure. So if you can run HIP RT, you should. But in general, so what we've done so far is we've tested the 4090 in the 4 test scenes, and we've tested the 7800 XT. And in all cases, except for one test, Blender 4 is actually the same or slower in cycles on both the 4090 and the 7800 XT, and it might just be slightly slower on Blender 4 versus 3.6. So we have the same situation or a minor slowdown. The only exception so far is that on the Lone Monk scene, my 7800, it did 204 seconds versus 215 on Blender 3.6. So that was the only speed up that I found so far. And again, 11.5 seconds out of 200 seconds, that's a pretty small difference, so that could be some error. And this GPU is in a slightly better machine now, so that could be part of it. But Syntax says, is the RX 580 compatible with HIP RT? Okay, so there's two things to note here. One is that in Blender 3.0 and above, the 500 series AMD GPUs were not compatible with cycles. Some people have got them to run. Some people have tried to run like AMD ProRender to get around it. It almost always results in crashes. So if you have a 500 series AMD, it's going to be really hard to use Blender 3 and higher. I don't think they added more compatibility for Blender 4, but I'll have to check on that. So we'll have to go look that up. Maybe when we finish our tests on the Intel here in a minute, we can go look into their release notes, because they'll mention if they changed that. But any AMD GPU older than the 6000 series does not have ray trace cores. And if you don't have ray trace cores, and this goes for CUDA as well, so if you have a 10 series NVIDIA or a 1600, like a 1660 Super from NVIDIA, you actually lose speed running optics. They are compatible, but optics is slower for those, at least in my tests. And that's all in this chart here. Let's see. I don't know if I had outlined them very well or not. Yeah, here's a good example. So 5000 series AMD, it's the same. It's the same situation. So here, these two results here, this is Lone Monk results. Running HIP, you save 65 seconds. You save more than a minute running HIP instead of HIP RT. So if you can't support the RT cores, then yeah, you don't want to use HIP RT. And the same goes for CUDA versus optics. So 16 series, do I have another 16 series result on here? I don't think I do. I just have the one. So if you don't have RT cores in general, run the older version of the render API, depending on what brand you have. That's either CUDA or HIP. If you do have RT cores, run HIP RT or optics for the best performance. Syntax says, thanks, yeah. I've just been having a tough time with Blender because of it, unfortunately. Yes, I'm sorry to hear that. I know a lot of people have. You know, they have 500 series AMD GPUs on a pure performance basis, and with 8 gigs of VRAM, they're not bad cards still. They're just not supported well anymore. And it's unfortunate because I know how many people still have them, you know, and I have a small pile of them actually as well, and I just can't really use them for Blender anymore. Your only bet would be to go back to 2.83 because they're fully supported, but you lose so much speed and performance and all the other features that it's just not worth doing it. But let me go back here real quick to the. So this was the AMD machine. This was render 11. I'm going to close this out. We're done. We're done testing on that one. But yeah, just one more quick summary on both 4090 and 7800 XT. Blender 4 is the same speed or slightly slower on average than Blender 3.6. So let's load up Classroom on the Intel now. Okay, so this is, let's pull up Task Manager. You can see the specs. This is the Werewolf machine, which was my code name for my old desktop. So this one is the 5950X with 64 gigs of 3600 megahertz DDR4. And this one is running the Intel Arc A770 GPU with 16 gigs of VRAM. So that is the test bench that I'm running on this one. Pretty overpowered for testing one GPU on, but that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Let's go into our preferences here. Make sure that we have one API selected, just our GPU, and Ombre on GPU is enabled. And then I'm going to go ahead and render this image. So the one I'm really curious about is Intel because I haven't tested Intel for a few months, and their driver updates seem to be way more impactful than AMD or NVIDIA. Basically, I think their drivers were so bad at the beginning that they've caught up. Excuse me. And the driver updates have brought the hardware back up to where it could be, where it should have been at launch. That's how I would look at it. I don't think they've optimized it or found anything crazy that wasn't there before. I think they've just finally unlocked their hardware. But this is one I haven't tested, so I'm really excited to see how the Intel goes. All right, so we'll let this one run. Now, the Intel Arc, it's going to run all of these tests slower than the other two GPUs, probably, unless they really made a big change. But the interesting thing is the A770 can be bought for close to $200, and it has 16 gigs of VRAM on that model. So it's actually a really good value proposition for rendering. And then like gaming and stuff, it's a decent card. So it's kind of a really a weird black sheep in the crowd that it stands out in kind of its own space. But it looks like we got 42.4 seconds on Classroom with the Arc. 42.4. So let's highlight this one, and then let's go find our previous. It looks like the best I had before was 38 seconds on 3.6. So Blender 4 is, again, 4.4 seconds slower than 3.6 on the Intel. So let's try it on Barbershop. It's a little bit heavier scene. That's normally a better test anyway. But it looks like we're having the same conclusion across the board. Blender 4 is actually, on average, a couple percent slower at the most than Blender 3.6 was for cycles rendering. So there's all kinds of reasons that could be. My best guess is that the older shaders are not as efficient as the new BSDF shader that they brought in to Blender 4, and therefore the compiling and stuff like that is not as efficient. But other than that, I'm not really sure what the problem would be. J Squared is in here. Hello, welcome. And they say interesting. Yeah, so I wouldn't avoid using Blender 4 because of it. Uh-oh. This looks like some sort of magical Blender 4 crash. Let's give this just a second. I'm still remoted in. You can see the little remote desktop bar at the top. But it looks like we may have had a driver crash or a GPU crash because I don't have any UI right now. And you can actually see I can still pull up my Windows. Look at that. Okay. Well, the system RAM is definitely not full. And the CPU looks like it's clocking high, so I don't think we have any other system problems. Let me close this, and I'll try to remote in again. So this is the only time I've had a driver problem or a GPU problem on Blender 4 so far. And funny enough, it's the Intel GPU that seems to be causing the problem. So, yep. Okay, so what happened here was either Blender or the GPU driver crashed while trying to load the barbershop scene. So, I'll open up Blender 4 again. And it's very possible that all three of these GPU brands will have new drivers for Blender 4 in the next few days. Or their next release will have an update that helps. But we'll try to load the barbershop one more time. If we can't get it to go, we'll mark it down as driver crash and wait for a newer version of Blender and new drivers. Sometimes this happens, though. I know trying to get it to run on 3.6 originally was also difficult. If anybody's an Intel expert, I'd love to know if I'm doing something wrong. I don't think I am, though. But they are a little bit more involved with installing drivers. Okay, and this is looking like the same crash again. So let's go ahead and close that out. This is the barbershop, so I'm going to put an A in here for now, and we'll just put crash. So we have no result on the Intel or the barbershop scene. So I'm gonna remote in another time, and because we ran Classroom with no problem. So I'll try to run Lone Monk. We'll see if that opens up. Definitely not like maxing out the system RAM or anything. So it shouldn't be anything like that. I'll also make sure that Intel isn't trying to install a driver as we're doing this. It doesn't look like it is. But let's just try to open Blender, and then let's go back. We'll skip barbershop. Let's try the Lone Monk scene. Yeah, and with GPUs, yeah, see, this file opened just fine. So something in the barbershop scene was not agreeing with the Intel GPU, and what that is, I could not tell you. But it looks like everything's ready to go on this one, so we'll try to start the render, and everything's loading up just fine. So we'll sit on this one and let it go. Yeah, not sure what that's about. And you know, new motherboard platforms, new software, it's always going to have the most likely chance to have crashes. So I bet the next daily release of Blender probably has some optimizations already that may or may not help fix. So something like a 4.0.1 may or may not have fixes for some of these crashes already, but I'll have to swing back in another week or so. Maybe I'll post a quick video about trying the Intel again. Because I think hardware-wise, they are a really good card. If you can get them for anywhere near $200, they're by far the cheapest 16 gig card. And while this is loading, let's look at some results. So let's go to Lone Monk, but like the Arc, let's go find it here. If you can get it to run, depending on the test scene, it looks like previously I couldn't get Lone Monk to run, so this will actually be a really good result to grab. But the old barbershop results on 3.6 with Intel, it was competing with a 6800 XT at one point, and it's, let's see, what's another good? It's faster than a 6700 XT, which to this day are still more expensive than that card at actual market prices. So I have it listed at 370. That's like the max you should pay for one. But I've been able to get them. I think I got mine for 290 shipped. So you know, it's cheaper than like a 6800 brand new, which given it's an old card, but that's a $530 card. So the Intel can be a really good value proposition, but obviously, like looking at the old Lone Monk scene results, I had crashes in that as well. So the Intel is apparently more prone to crashing in general, but let's go back. It looks like it's going to run it this time. I'd really like for Intel to be a safe bet because they really have a lot of potential, and their price points are so good that if they worked all the time, I would jump on them no matter what. They also need a consumer grade card with more than 16 gigs of VRAM, but I think we'll see that next generation. Okay, so this is a bit slower on this card. We're about 2/3 of the way through it. The other note about the Intel is it uses 250 watts, which is quite a bit for the speed you get out of it. So they're not power efficient, but you get a lot of VRAM and relatively good RT performance for the price. This one will be done soon. for everybody that's here that wasn't here before, big news this week was I got approved for YouTube Partner Program. So that's been my excitement for the week. So I've seen everybody in this chat right now. I've seen on here a lot. So thank you for being here and supporting me. It's those of you that pop in and hang out for a bit frequently that really make that possible for me. So thank you. And it looks like we're just about done with this. Okay. Hopefully it won't crash out finishing denoising. No, okay, so it ran. 4 minutes and 17 seconds. And we are on Lone Monk, and it looks like this is actually the first time I've been able to get a stable result on the A770. Plus 17. Okay, so 257 seconds, and that puts it at, again, a little bit slower than a 6800 XT, and it looks like, and I haven't retested this in Blender 4, but it looks like let's compare the A770, which let's say you should be able to get for about $250 now. Let's compare that one real quick to the $500 4060 Ti with 16 gigs of VRAM. So they have the same VRAM. The NVIDIA card is literally twice the price, effectively, and it's actually slower by 5 seconds. So, if you start comparing these two, to get 16 gigs of VRAM, you have to spend about $500 on new cards, except for the Arc. So the Intel is really, really an attractive offer if you can make sure it works all the time. But that's just kind of an interesting side note. It's faster than my original 7800 XT tests, but once RT came out, HIP-RT actually was a huge speed up. So the 7800 XT is quite a bit ahead of the Intel Arc. It looks like by about 42 seconds or so. So that's a pretty big margin. So the 7800 XT is a better card in general, but again, it's twice as expensive. So, all right, let's run Scanlans now. Hopefully that one will load up for us. Scanlans. Off-topic question, but what are your thoughts on the R9 5900 as a workstation CPU? Do you mean the 5900X, or do they have an efficient 5900 with no X? Either way, the 5900X, so the 12 core CPU from the 5000 series from AMD, I have seen those for sale for so cheap that I don't need one, but I was very tempted to build a system around it. But you can get them down into the high 200s and low 300 US dollars on sales, and with Black Friday deals coming up, I would, if you're eyeballing that, I would jump on it. You're gonna get 12 cores at 4.75 gigahertz, single core, and probably like 4.5 all core with good cooling. They're absolutely fantastic. This machine that we're on, the Werewolf machine, is my old workstation, and that's the 5950X, which is the 16 core version, but clock speeds are going to be really similar. And I will tell you that the 5000 series CPUs from AMD, they run way more efficient when they're not multi-threaded. I have a 360 millimeter all-in-one cooler for the 7950X that I'm running in the workstation now, and that thing, it idles at 51 Celsius, so my cooler always runs. Like, I can always hear it. The pump is always going. And the old 5950X did not do that, so those 5000 series chips are fantastic, and they're actually a bit more power efficient than the current generation. So I would jump on it. If you're looking, you can get the X570 boards and those 5000 series processors a lot cheaper than the new stuff. Plus the RAM is cheaper and just everything else. So I would say that's one of the best values in building a PC currently. Obviously, just keep in mind that you won't be able to get a better CPU. Like there's no more upgrades after the 5000 series. But all right, let's run the Intel here on Scanlands. But yeah, I think you could save hundreds of dollars and have a really good computer. I will say, having tested the 7950X extensively in like Cinebench, I do get 50 or 60% better results multi-threading versus my 5950X. So there is a large speed up generationally wise, I guess, between the 5000 and the 7000 series. But depending on what you're doing, you're probably not necessarily going to be running the CPU at full multi-thread anyway. And the single core and 4-core speeds are going to be more of what you'd look at. But J Squared says, cool, thanks. I have a couple of AMD boards with first gen Ryzen chips and was looking to upgrade it since I don't need a new build. Yeah. And the other things people have complained about with the brand new 7000 series, well, I keep saying brand new, they're actually closer to a year old now, but with the 7000 series, overclocking is more in depth. You have to have better motherboards to actually get all the speed out of them. And RAM is a lot harder to get to work versus older systems where you could basically plug in most kits and it'd work. You have to really look into it now. And there's some luck involved with picking the right RAM kit. Boot times are actually a lot slower on the 7000 series than they were on the 5000. So there's a lot of irritating stuff about the new system that it really makes the 5000 series look like a good value now. And I'm just when I'm running fluid simulations or working with millions of hair strands, it really takes a lot of CPU. So that's why I'm chasing that multi-core speed. But if you don't always need it, then yeah, I'd say like 5000 series is a great platform. All right, and I've just restarted this render because it took a long time to package everything. So I don't want to include that in the render time. But yeah, from a just how it runs day to day, going from a first generation Ryzen chip to the 5000 series, it's going to feel so much faster. Everything you do is going to feel like a massive speed boost. And I think 3000 to 5000 was even a large enough speed boost that that would even feel like a lot. So I think that'd be a great change up for you. Plus, they're just so power efficient in general. The new 7000 series, to me, AMD said, well, let's kind of do what Intel used to, and let's just feed it more power. It's a little bit better chip. It's got some extra features and all that, but like, let's just give it more power. So if you can't push 230 watts and keep it under 95 Celsius, it's going to bottleneck itself automatically at 95, no matter what you're doing. So the only way to get more performance is to cool more, and it's just not feasible in a desktop. My 3700X still keeps up, but it's showing its age. The 1500X is definitely showing its age. Yeah. If you get And if you get really good deals on a 5900 or a 5900X, you'll be happy with them, I guarantee it. Plus, you'll gain a lot of cores. 3700X is 8 cores, if I remember, and going up to 12 cores that are way faster is going to be a huge change. So, okay, Scanlands got done at 1 minute and 45 seconds. So let's go record our last result. And I did it again where I said it and didn't remember it. 145. 105 seconds. Oh, okay. Look at this here now. So, T3MPY. We'll call that Tempe. Tempe says, tested any AMD GPU yet? Yes. So everything on the high side of my charts here is old results in Blender 3.6, and the 3 I'm testing tonight are down in the bottom, and I have got through all 3 cards now. So, and I just finished Scanlands, and this one I just got excited about. So you came in at a good time. The Intel A770 actually tied the 7800 in the Scanlands test, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, what I've seen, Tempe and everyone else, Blender 4 is actually slightly slower by a couple seconds on every GPU I've tested tonight, except for one result on the Lone Monk. The 7800 was slightly faster on Blender 4 than 3.6, but otherwise I would say that the Cycles render engine, for all of the different APIs, all the different brands, it seems to be running at about exactly the same speed or just a few seconds slower on all of these scenes. So let's go through these one more time. So the 4090, the 7800 XT, and the Arc all test very close to what they did before on the test bench scenes. There's only some outliers, but basically they're within a couple % of the speed. So I would say that there are no changes at this point. AMD's HIP-RT. Let's open up our AMD system one more time. But Blender even still shows HIP-RT as being experimental. So I think if you have an AMD GPU, the big update for you in render speed is going to be when Blender fully implements HIP-RT. And you'll be able to tell because we'll pull this up here, and I'll open Task Manager one more time so you guys are know for sure we're talking about the right machine. But here's the 7800X, and this is running on a 5800X CPU on an X470 motherboard with 32 gigs of 3600 megahertz RAM. Okay, so that's what we got. But let me just show you this. If I come up here to the preferences in Blender 4, this is Blender 4. HIP RT is still it's still marked as experimental. So I think once it's fully implemented, if you will, the experimental should come off of there. And I think they do have some additional optimization that is supposed to come along with fully implementing that. So for AMD, I think we're going to see more speed ups. Intel at this point, honestly, I think the Arc series cards, I think they're at their limit. So we probably won't get better drivers now. Same with NVIDIA. I think there might be minor tweaks. Unless they completely change the Cycles render engine itself in Blender, I don't think Blender 4, up to 4.3 is probably going to have any major speed boosts. So, and I think my results tonight confirm that so far. So, just to run through these again, let's look at them in the order I did them. So the 4090 tonight on Classroom did 8.25 seconds versus 9 seconds before. So that's within a small enough amount. I wouldn't call that different. I'd say that's the same. Barbershop, the 4090 did 39.6 versus 35 on Blender 3.6. So let's mark that. So the 4090 actually slowed down by 4.6 seconds tonight. Lone Monk scene, we had 104 seconds versus 97, so it was actually 7 seconds slower tonight than on 3.6. And Scanlands, the 4090 was 24.2, which is 4.2 seconds slower than the 20 that it ran on Blender 3.6. So results are either similar or just a little bit slower. I think we're going to need a new NVIDIA driver here in the next few days that probably makes those similar. But like I've been saying, I think they've changed how the actual shaders work in Blender 4 now. So if you're using these old test scenes with the old type of shader, I bet there's a lot of inefficiencies that the new shaders probably don't have. So that's my guess as to why it's slower. But let's go to the AMD. So the 7800X in Classroom did 28.75 seconds tonight. My best result before, let's highlight both of these. My best result before was this one, which was 28 seconds. So that's within a second. I'd say that's a similar result. Barbershop, let's highlight that guy. On Blender 3.6, I got 117.5 seconds versus 122. So that is actually 4.5 seconds slower on Barbershop for the 7800 XT on the new Blender. So Blender 4 is 4.5 seconds slower on that one than Blender 3.6. Lone Monk, we had 204 tonight. And my best result prior was 215.5. So it looks like this one actually got faster going to Blender 4 by about 11.5 seconds. And keep in mind, a second or two or three up and down is all part of error. And then Scanlands, let's look at that quick one more time. 7800 XT was 105 seconds, and prior I had got 103. So that's within a close enough margin. I'd say that's probably error. So yeah, so AMD, it had a couple that were faster, a couple that were slower. I'd say they average out to basically being effectively the same on average. Same thing with NVIDIA. Intel, the only thing I didn't have was I couldn't get the barbershop scene to load on the Arc. So I might have to revisit Intel. NJS WK says definitely going for the 6700 XT for now. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they go for price wise now, but I have a 6700 XT. It's a nice little card, low power draw. They come in smaller platforms versus some of these 200 to 250 watt cards. So yeah, they're nice. I think, you know, you can pause these or watch this back later if you need to go through these results to make decisions. All of these results are they're equally as valid now as they were, because I think the results are so similar. And actually, let's just sort this now. So all of our results from tonight are now filtered into the list. But yeah, comparing the 6700 XT is right here. It's a little bit slower than the A770, but again, I've had GPU crashes tonight on the Intel GPU, so that might be enough to scare you away. Oh, and it looks like I do have actually a couple better results for the 6700. So this one here is the best. 42.5 seconds. So it's basically tied with the A770. And about 40% slower than a 7800 XT. So I think that price difference is probably justifiable. So yeah, it's a nice card. I don't think you can go wrong. I think for $300, I think it's likely that a 4060 probably still beats the 6700 XT, but they don't have 12 gigs of VRAM. So that's kind of the decision you have to look at. I haven't tested the 7600. That would be the other one. But again, not 12 gigs. And normally for this kind of stuff, you want 12 plus if you can get it. Barbershop, I'm just going to sort these as we go. There's those results for if you guys need to check these out later to do your own research. So I'm just going to kind of go sort these through so you guys can grab this in a nice organized list. Let's get rid of some of these comparisons because they're not loading the right cells anymore. Yeah. So, and as I said earlier, Edgar the Face, who has been in here tonight, has helped me a lot. We're developing a submittal form that would allow people to send in their test results into a standardized location so that we can all kind of compare notes. So watch for that. We'll get a full ready to go version of that eventually. But that's another way that people can share, you know, their test results. It's always possible that the machine I used on whatever day to test a certain GPU may have not been optimal, and you know, average results across many different tests is just better statistics anyway. So I like that, you know, we can kind of share notes and get better results that way. Yeah, I didn't think it'd do that great, honestly. I can actually buy your other GPU recommendation, but the 12 gigs sounds better, and the price. Yeah, and I don't know what the 6700 XT goes for currently, because if you can get them down into the $200s of dollars, they're probably good. You know, that's probably a good value. You know, I still really prefer the 4070 because that is 12 gigs. So let me plug that in here. But it's twice as expensive. So, you know, if you're not in that price range, you're just not in that price range. You know what I mean? It is more than twice as fast as the 6700 XT though. So that's the only note. Let's see. So that's all of those. So that's it for GPU test tonight. I was going to see if whoever's still hanging out, if you guys want to run some Cinebench to test the new CPUs, that would be one thing we can move on to if you guys want to. I know you probably came here for GPU tests, but that's one other thing that I like to tinker with, and I am on the new 7950X platform now, so I have some of my results mixed in here, but for multi-core testing, I'm getting 50 to 60% faster results with the 7950X versus the 5950X that I just moved off of. So pretty crazy that one generation gets that much of a speed up. But yeah, so if you guys have other GPU tests you want me to do tonight, I'll just have to go swap them in the machines physically. So the biggest issue with that would just be like getting new drivers. That takes a few minutes. I might get the 4070. I see someone who sells it low enough, but it's kind of sketchy. So yeah, thank you for the summary. Yeah. I'm glad it helps. I know it's another way for you to see all this data in one spot, because a lot of the big hardware test YouTubers and stuff like that, they don't get very deep into rendering. You know, they kind of show some Blender results just on a surface level, but they don't go into it at all. They don't tell you how to optimize anything. So I'm glad it's helpful. That's what I'm here for, you know. But yeah, the 4070 is a great card. out of this entire list, I would recommend the 4070. If you are willing to deal with the Arc A770 potential driver issues, which I don't normally have them, but it is harder to install, and it has other conditions that you need to meet on your motherboard. But the Arc is a good one for its price if you're under $300. From AMD, the 7800 XT has not been disappointing so far. So I'd recommend that if you want to spend that much. And they, most people do other things than rendering with their PCs. So, AMD and Intel are going to be really good in games. So NVIDIA tends to win the render tests, but if you're doing other stuff too, that preference doesn't necessarily matter too much, because AMD's GPUs are great for gaming now. So they're, in my mind, tied between all the brands on gaming. So that's the other condition people always throw in there. But yeah, that's it for GPUs tonight, I think, because reinstalling drivers while streaming is going to be a problem because my internet's been bad enough tonight. So I don't think I'll be able to stay on the stream and download anything. I will wait for the chat. If you guys want to see any Cinebench tests for CPU, let me know. Otherwise, we'll probably call it good for this one. I'm actually probably going to make a how to make a fur system in Blender video tonight. And I might actually start that on Blender 4 and see if there's any differences, but that's kind of my next thing. So if you guys want to see any Cinebench, and Cinebench 24, the new one, actually runs GPU tests. So that's been kind of interesting to see. So I'll actually go start one. Trying to play The Last of Us Remake on PC, and I see the 6700 XT is good enough for the price of performance, but it lacks the rendering. So yeah, I might ask the seller about the 4070. Yeah, if you can get one at your price range that you need, it is a fantastic GPU. And if you do any recording or streaming, having the AV1 encoder as a hardware encoder on the GPU is really, really nice too. It may or may not impact your decision, but that's one other thing that people don't think about. And it's very power efficient. So it's I want to say it's only a 200 watt GPU, maybe 230. But it's just significantly better efficiency per watt as well versus the 6000 series AMD cards. So that's considerable too. But I'm going to run a GPU test on Cinebench 2024 here real quick. So I'll just show you how that looks. But yeah, Cinebench is kind of fun now because you can test single core, multi-core CPU, or you can test your GPU. But I just always think it's entertaining to run some 4090 tests on Cinebench because this thing gets through so many passes. It's just insane. It's insane how fast it is. NJSWK says, "Oh yeah, about streaming. Does the AMD now have somewhat new encoders, or better at least? Might try streaming too. Yeah. I think the 7000 series AMD GPUs do actually have hardware AV1 encoding, and I think Intel Arc actually does too. So to be completely fair, all of the newer generations of cards do have them, I believe. I think they all perform similarly. But I guess my point was just going from a 6000 series to a 7000 series or a 4070 would get you that encoder. So, just any of the new cards have it, any of the older ones don't. So that's the difference. That's not to say that AMD doesn't have it. I guess I should have clarified that differently. But yeah, they should. So if you go get a 7700 XT or something, that should have that encoder on it. Now I will say, for those of you who weren't here for the fun earlier, my OBS Studio, which is what I'm streaming from, continually was crashing with AV1 enabled. And I know that I've had that issue before, so I switched back to H264, which is the older GPU encoder, and that did just fine. That's what I've been on now for the last hour and a half or so, and that doesn't have any problems. So, not sure why my AV1 is a problem. It could just be my 4090 is acting up, but I've always had issues with it. But, I mean, that's why I have to run 720p for my streams. I just don't have the internet to be able to carry 1080. So as soon as OBS starts to get into too low of bitrate, it seems to like crash it kind of, and it just won't reconnect very well. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. This Cinebench is running. If you guys get this, Cinebench 24 is free. You don't have to buy it. The biggest thing to know is that if you're doing anything other than just this benchmark, your results are going to be way worse. So the result I get on this test is going to end up being significantly worse than average just because I'm streaming. So I'm curious to see how much worse, but this GPU should get about 35,000 points, and it looks like it's going to come in around 30,000, which is a huge loss. But so if you guys do get this, we'll probably start comparing these results. I'll add like a tab on my spreadsheet. Just know that you have to have everything turned off. Like, make sure Steam is not open, and make sure whatever other game launchers are not open, because just having background tasks will actually destroy this benchmark a lot. But yeah, I just think they're kind of fun to run. Pull up Task Manager and get some really good surface level information here. I always think Task Manager is kind of funny because it doesn't give you the stats you really want. But yeah, here's the new desktop for those of you who might be curious. I am on the 7950X now. This thing clocks so high, it's crazy. I can play things like PUBG or Battlefield 5 at 5.5 gigahertz locked. All 4 or 6 cores just sit right at 5.5, which is just wild. But the thing's hot. The cooler goes 24/7, even if it's idling. You know, I was able to get my RAM kit to run at 6,000 megahertz. I know a lot of people really have issues getting that to work, so you got to be careful. But yeah, I'll probably have a little video breakdown about all the pitfalls of AM5 that I found, which is the chipset that, well, it's the socket, the AMD socket that runs the 7000 series. I'll break down all the problems I've had with it so far, and, you know, is it worth it? Is it not worth it to upgrade yet? But that'll be one that's coming up. I'll have more GPU tests on Blender 4.1 and so on, just to make sure that they don't sneak in some optimizations that people would need for better GPU test data. I think I might just rerun all of these streams again for all the cards I have, just to be sure. So watch for those, and then I'm hoping that tonight, for all the Blender users out there, I'm going to try to get that that full body hair tutorial done, because that's another tricky thing to set up properly. So just FYI, that's kind of the current plan. But yeah, I think I think for now that's about it. I am 5 minutes into this test. It's a 10-minute test. So I will let this run for just a few minutes, and then I'll probably stop it here once this thing's done with. But again, to everybody who stopped in and who sees this in the future, thank you. Thank you for all the support. I finally got to YouTube partnership this week. It feels so crazy to be able to say that finally, and it's because of all you guys popping in. So I can never thank you enough for that. Hopefully I can give you back enough information that you know, we kind of trade off some value that way. But yeah, just a big thank you. Otherwise, watch for more soon, and we'll just let this 4.5 minutes run out on this test and call it good. J Squared says, "Congrats, thank you, thank you." You know, for the people who don't run YouTube channels or haven't tried that out, it's a lot of work. It's been 22 months, and I would guess I've probably spent 3,000 or 4,000 hours of actual real time working on the channel and working on Blender in general. So, you know, it's just validating to get to this point, I guess. Thanks for the stream, he says, or he or she, I don't know. J Squared says, thanks for the stream. You're welcome. I love doing them. It's a lot more fun than making videos in the quiet alone. So, you know, I'll run streams whenever I think I have something useful for you. So, yep. And if there's any other questions, or any other ideas for things we can do with the channel, let me know. Edgar the Face and I are working on some more standardized ways to report data so everybody can send in results in a nice, clean form. And then we'll have some nice charting that kind of cleans the data up afterward. So that's coming eventually. I do have access to memberships on YouTube now, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. But if you guys are interested in some sort of like a membership tier for renting render machines or doing some animation collaborations or something like that, let me know if you have any ideas. I really just want to ask viewers what they want out of stuff like that. I don't want to paywall random stuff that's not useful to anybody. And it's just a way for really time-intensive processes like animating or you know, finishing rendered scenes for people is another thing I have the capacity to do. I don't want to just paywall those things, but like they cost a lot for me to do. So if you guys want any of that sort of thing from me, let me know, and I'll start looking into a way for like that to be a marketplace option for people if they want to, you know, if they want to hire my machines. So I know paying render farms is really expensive, so I'd be able to run renders for people very cheaply, relatively. So if you guys have any ideas about ways to collaborate on stuff like that, let me know. It's overwhelming. Once you get the notice that you're a YouTube partner, you have to accept some agreements, and then all of a sudden there's like 5 new things you have to go set up, and they're just a little overwhelming because I don't know what all I should be doing with it. But I'll kind of let viewers and subscribers guide that decision making as I go. But yeah, just in general, I'm just really excited for the future, and you know, I'm glad I finally got to the point where it's gonna start to look like a little bit more of a professional operation, and hopefully we can do some really, really cool stuff going forward. Yeah, we got just a minute left on this test. Any other thoughts or questions? Throw them in the chat. I'm just kind of letting this thing run out at this point. Do you guys want me to rerun? So like, let's say Blender 4.3 comes out with fully implemented HIPRT. Would you guys like to see some streams that focus on that? Do you think we've covered it enough? What are your opinions on like retesting everything? Should I leave off like the 10 series GPUs or the 20 series GPUs, or do you guys? I know enough people still have those cards that it's not a waste of time by any means, but is that something you guys would like to see for your comparisons? I know personally it'd be really interesting to see if like my 2080 Ti starts to get slower relatively as time goes on, just because it doesn't have as good of cores in it, you know. So if you have any ideas for that kind of stuff, let me know. You've seen my list. All those cards on the list I have, except for ones where I've noted that somebody else provided the benchmark. I know Edgar the Face has given me a few, like for 7900 XT, XTX. I don't have one of those. But otherwise, everything on that list I have sitting here, I can run. So just let me know what you'd like to see. But all right, okay. So Cinebench GPU test just got done. I think I've got 36,000 points in this before, and the only real difference currently is that I'm streaming, and I don't have a lot of background programs open, but going from 36,000 points down to 29,500 just because I'm running OBS Studio for streaming is kind of wild. So that's the one last footnote I'll make. If you guys get these GPU test benchmarks, you probably want to, and I would say rendering like in Blender it's not really affected by it too much, but if you're going to get Cinebench, they even have a warning in there about closing all the background tasks you can. But if you get that one, if you want to compare results, make sure you close everything else. Otherwise, your results will look low, and I don't want you to think your computer is slower than everyone else. So just be aware of that. But I'll probably do a little bit more Cinebench tests on a live here one of these days, and just have a bunch of machines ready to go that we can just run them in order, I guess. So, yep. But that's it for tonight. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Let me know what else you guys think, and I'll see you next time.